Yeah. Right, so what I'm gonna start off with, guys, obviously, if you've got any questions, just fling them in and I'll answer what I can. I'm gonna start off with, obviously, I marked this up on this feed last week and I've not touched it since, but I had a quickest of flick throughs earlier, and I noticed that obviously this was the trade that we marked up last week, and it has since come and tapped in one of the other balances that I marked live as well. So one of the other possible entries that we were sort of going through. Um, so I figured as a back testing purpose, obviously it's tapped this one and it's reacted well out of it, and possibly is obviously if it was stats breaking structures, then that's the overall major move. But obviously because we marked the four odd areas that we did, that I did like, obviously we can start to back test why this one got a reaction and then why this one here got a reaction, and to see if there's anything that differentiates between these two as opposed to the other two, possibly a third one here that didn't get a reaction, and then we can build up rules around why we would then consider these two over the others that didn't get tapped. So I figured we'd start with that, and obviously that's good for any abilities, new or old. So then when I'll get on to, I think it was GBP Ord, where this might be the same reason as well for GBP Ord. Where I said there's two orders from the same area. This is very likely the same reason as well, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So I'll just go before that, and obviously I'll show you the actual tap in on that zone. Um, Obviously it fills it to this. I think this will be a order block rather than a imbalance. So the imbalance would have been just under here on whatever time frame. Filled it to the dot, but obviously, should we have had a pending on that, we would have allowed for spreads and earn a tiny bit more. So if we'd have had a pending on it, which I didn't, but I'm not concerned about that. We won't go to the dot. So let's go that way. So about a pip in size, obviously it won't click to half a pipette for me. So I mean, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd have been under 2 pips anyway. So that's what the order would have looked like. Possibly more. 2.5's even better for us. Obviously, you can see it taps in perfectly. Spread would have been tapped in with spread because obviously the order would have been there. So now that we know that the zone itself would have been fine, we'll check out what exactly the difference is between this one, which I'll turn green, so we know it's an okay, valid zone with a good reaction out of. And we'll see if there's a difference between this one and the others around it. So start off on the minute. Obviously, if there's any questions, guys, just jump in and ask away. um, so obviously, I think I say most weeks. Obviously, I'm not always keen on the ones that are very extreme. Obviously, there's nothing that shows on the minute there. Um, Obviously, structure wise, this is the overall 1 minute low that I had marked. I like the fact that this one takes this low as well. Obviously, it's a minute low and it's not a structure low as such, but obviously at the minute we're just trying to determine if there's a reason it would react out of this one as opposed to one of the other ones. Because I've not looked at it at all other than I see it tapped it, so I don't know if there is anything to tell the difference, but we could argue that this one here is pretty much filled. Obviously, it returns back, so that might be why that one's a no-go. Might actually create a trend line as well. Quite. So this one here. Obviously, this is the one that does get tapped into. We've got a lovely push away, lovely candle there, which is obviously why I marked it last week. This one loads up. Come on. Yeah. Again, a nice enough push away. Happy with it, which is why I marked it, but I don't know if it's as clean as the other one. About the same sort of push away, really. But that one doesn't really. Does it do anything? I'm not sure. We'll go to the lower ones, see if there's anything that we can see lower that we dislike. That one actually takes it in a way, but we'd have covered the high. Not anymore. Don't think so. No, just the four. So yeah, I mean, on this occasion, I don't, other than this one possibly being refilled on the seconds that we showed, or majority filled. I do this with all of my trades and things like that as well, guys. I'm always looking at, obviously, I mark multiple zones, see if, and just trying to see if there's any that I prefer over the others, and maybe this is actually balanced, and this is why this one gets taken rather than this one that doesn't. So deeper analysis means that that one was, like I say, not actually imbalanced, not what we were looking for, and this one is. Obviously, it could always still come and fill this later on and react out of it. It's just not my favourite zone. There's possibly a little mini trend line sweep in here as well. Highs there. Possible trend line as well, maybe. Mini trend line as well, possibly. Don't get taken. So yeah, but yeah, there's mini equal highs there anyway. I know we're running on 10 seconds, but gets taken, and then obviously it starts breaking to the downside as well, which leads to being broke down here. So yeah, there's a good reason why that one was also tapped as well. So obviously, if you've not seen last week's, obviously go check it out. And obviously, these are all the markings from it. I'll delete these in a minute. So what I'll do is I'll just move on to where that's gone to. So it's gone 44-ish RR at the minute. But I don't, obviously I've drawn this out. I don't know if it's going to go higher still or lower. It's in one of the, I'd say it's in the crucial area. So if it breaks this low, I'd be definitely thinking we're going to create a new 4 hour lower low. But I think it could also still come up and then still break to the downside. So yeah, it's not sure. It's the middle of I think this 15-minute structure, so this purple line is the crucial decider. So if it breaks below that, then this was the move. If it goes higher, we still might 1 minute breaker structure, and then obviously it'll determine if this goes and continues to the upside and does this, then this low will become the next low. I'd want to see it broken to the downside. Um, so yeah, that's still not 100% sure about that, but it's offered a couple of real good opportunities. So 41 fold, 44 fold, all within a couple of days, is it? A few days a week. So 30th of January entry, 12th of Feb, couple of weeks. So it's offering nice trades. I'll come back to this because like I said, I do think there is two possible trades on this. So I'll explain it on this one where I've not got all the markings that are going to confuse everybody. So obviously I posted this over the weekend, Saturday, I believe it was. So we've got a possible of two trades from this. So obviously it looks here like I've got the same green box marked, but there's two. So we've got a green box here as an entry, which this wick taps into. And then we've got a green box here. This just about misses, but that's probably a me issue with trying to be so tight. So what I'll do is I'll go over this first entry here. So pretty simple. We've got a build up of liquidity here. This sweeps it. It obviously fills something that it's happy with. And then from there, I'll just go to there. So build up liquidity, sweep, and then we should have a 1 minute breaker structure, change of character, or whatever you want to call it. So liquidity sweep. Obviously, this is the low, the 1 minute low. So we've got a structure trending upwards there. Low takes liquidity. Obviously, this is the 1 minute low I have marked with a green line. Low there. We then come across to where it breaks it. And there's a zone up here of the actual order block that comes and takes the low. Obviously, we also create a trend line here, which I'll get to in a minute. I'll just play a few candles. So because it's taken the liquidity, broken structure, obviously we then look for an entry that we are happy with. So as you see there, it taps the entry box. All that perfect. This will obviously go do its thing. So obviously that's the first trade. That's the entry. Obviously it'll go off and do its thing for a bit. So I'm going to move on to the second entry rather than showing how far it goes because it's not what I want this sort of section to be about. So first trade entered. I'm going to go back a step, obviously. So this is what breaks the 1 minute structure, which is over here. And then if we also look at, we've got another trend line here and this order block here. I think it was unmarked on the 2 hour actually, not the 4. Yeah, 2 hour zone here. So we've got this order block here is then what? Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Tickly nose. This order block here then is the cause of this trend line to be taken. So our entry zone becomes, obviously it fills the imbalance in here. That's a first imbalance fill, which is this tap in, and then obviously we break 1 minute structure again, which then means that this imbalance here becomes our entry zone. So this is why obviously this second one, I think it's just shy of, but as far as confirmations go, this is the setup's right. It's just the entry's off very slightly. Obviously, I marked it from this double bottom here. I know it's just shy of the imbalance, but I think I spoke obviously because there's a gap here as well. I think I spoke to Daniel about this last night actually. It would have been fine if I'd have marked it to the high of the next candle with gaps being involved. I can't remember exactly what it was like on the lower than what I already have. Yeah. But it's just shy. It was just shy of the entry, but confirmations are right, and this might have caught on a different feed or whatever. So entry model failed, but the actual trade as a whole worked. Pardon me. And then obviously as it breaks 1 minute structure from here, which is this low, comes back, should about mitigate that entry. I'll just cancel the bar replay and I'll just draw the boxes on. So first entry. Does that make sense to everybody, by the way? I know that's probably a lot of information for one 10-minute talk, but
Are you entering at this point or using it as confirmation?
so this where if you ever look at my charts, mate, if you see a green box, that's confirmation done for me. So obviously this is the first one. I'll just come back, mate. I'll just cover it again quick. So we've got liquidity here, 3 perfect touches, or about perfect, pretty damn close. So this then the liquidity gets taken. So at this point, obviously I can unextend that line. So yeah, liquidity gets taken with this touch here. Obviously, it's filled some imbalance in here. They don't have it marked, but it's come for say an imbalance that's about it would have filled something about there. There'll be something in there that is filled. Obviously, the price action up to it is bullish. It's taken liquidity, filled something it wanted to fill, and then it has started breaking lows. So obviously, I had this low mark. So this is where it closes below this wick low here. This is our first one of our first confirmations that it then wants to turn to the downside. So obviously, this is what caused it. It's taken liquidity. It triggered sell orders or whatever, but breaking the low for me is like what the actual pretty much the final confirmation that I want to put a sell on. So obviously I prefer if it broke a 15-minute structure or the higher the time frame, the better the confirmation. So the 1 minute's the lowest I will confirm on, but I'm not an aggressive trade. I've got aggressive entries. I'll have to check the higher time frame to actually see if this is bearish or bullish overall. I mean, it's bullish overall. I'll just delete these. Yeah, it's bullish overall. So obviously higher time frame is creating higher highs, higher lows. But obviously it's taken the high. So there's a good chance we're going to pull back. It's in a pullback phase anyway. Um, it's not quite. So I'm just seeing if this is a sweep as well, which could have been the cause of the start of the pullback. Not sure on that. I'll have to check that on the 4 hour snap for me. But yeah, we've obviously with regards to structure, there's we quite often would see a pullback after a sweep of liquidity anyway, or of a high being taken. Sorry, I'm going to cancel that. I didn't mean to do that. So structure wise, obviously we come up from down here, we pull back, we create a high there, we pull back after taking the high, pull back, we've taken the high again. We could well come back somewhere into to about here. Obviously, it's a complete guess at the minute. It might have already done it, obviously, but just turn that thinner and red. So structure wise, because we've taken the high, we've possibly taken a trend line somewhere. Obviously, there might be something there there might be a wick high in there on the full 4 hour summit, and this might be a perfect trend line. But because this is the possible 4 hour daily structure, we might well pull back into. I mean, it's just gone 50%. I'd quite like it to come a bit lower into this bottom 25, but there's no there's no guarantee it will. I'd like it to pull back somewhere into there, but they do say 50% is a good enough pullback. Obviously, it did that before the sell, but yeah. Obviously, I don't know where it's going to go from here, but it's definitely pulling back. That's what I can tell you, and it's probable because it's taken the high. So it's taken the high here, started to sell off. Obviously, it's filled the imbalance at the high or at one of the highs. One of the imbalances at the high. So it'd be interesting as to whether I think I was trying to buy from here midweek as well. I was trying to buy. Um, so yeah, there was a buy in here as well. Obviously, this might be a reaction to come back and mitigate something in here and continue upwards. But the setup was here as well. So like I say, just it's trend line, liquidity, trend line sweep, break to the downside on the 1 minute mitigation of an entry, and then it'll go and do its other thing. The exact same trades here, which is obviously the buy. There's a trend line, there's an order block that causes the sweep of this trend line, or possibly two trend lines. Obviously, it's come back, mitigated this yellow line, which is an imbalance, and then it started breaking to the upside. So if I was to put it as simple as possible, we've got a liquidity build up, we've got a sweep with a breaker structure, then a mitigation of an imbalance, 1 minute breaker structure, mitigation into an entry. So this is obviously they was the two cells that presented themselves. Thursday the 6th, Thursday the 13th, so 7 days apart, two possible entries. 34-ish risk to reward if you'd have been brave. And this one just shy of. I'm not even going to put that tool, I'm just going to measure it. I will actually. Because I consider this a valid trade. It's done everything barring where I put my entry zone. So NZD so been about 4 or 5 pips to fill out the spread. And then if it would have been another pip or so higher, obviously possible 34-ish risk reward. um, so obviously this is the other side of the move as well. So again, there's two possible entries on this. So again, trend line, sweep, break of structure here, which with this push up mitigates, sells off, does its thing. This order block then takes this trend line, so this becomes a point of interest. So we very much could obviously first imbalance fill from here. This hasn't tagged the entry that I had set for the buy. Obviously, I believe it to be possibly somewhere around here. So this week, I'm sort of hoping we will get obviously because I said we are higher time frame bullish overall, and we've possibly filled something that we could reverse out of as well. Obviously, see if this is our structure overall, it's filled this, possibly filled something like this. That might come lower still yet, actually. I'll have to check in this. This might be. So trend line in here. This order block takes this, so we might actually come lower still. I would hope that this is valid. I think I've still got the order on, but yeah, whether this works out or not, I mean, this is technically a valid POI. I'll check the imbalances in around here, but there is again, it's the two cells here very well possibly plays out here as well. So you get the initial one after the initial sweep, and then the first entry as it's pushing away from what would be your entry, then causes more liquidity to be taken, and then obviously it eventually pulls back to mitigate and possibly get a second bite of the cherry. So if that plays out, it's exactly the same as these two, sorry, but in reverse order. Or it might absolutely obliterate that and come down for something in possibly this, which takes a couple of trend lines. So we've got this trend line, that trend line. Um, does that make sense to everybody? Was I talking too
Yes.
fast?
Oh, I'm all right. But when you were saying before with the sell, you could have a 34 to
Yeah,
1 ratio sort of thing.
yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to set out for a 34 or 30 to 1 ratio from the get go. If the trade hit and you're up, would you run a trailing stop loss and maybe move the take profits as the market continues, or would you just
Mm,
stick to your 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 or whatever you set out originally?
no, so I don't do 1 to 3s, mate. I do hold for these bigger ones. So
Yeah,
um, obviously it's up to you guys whether you do or can do that. But obviously, because I'm working, obviously I'm pretty good with higher time frame structures. So if this exact move here, obviously I was waiting for 1 minute breaks for structure, things like that. So the exact because we say that the market is fractal, so by that we mean this pattern that you see on the 1 minute, you will see on the 15 minute, the 4 hour, the daily, weekly, and so on. You effectively see the same pattern, which would generally be like build up a liquidity, a sweep, break a structure, and then a mitigation. And then obviously I personally use multiple timeframes of that. So if I'm pretty confident that, um, so I don't really use above the 4 hour. That the 4 hours mainly my big one, but I'll occasionally look on the daily, but the structures are often the same. So if I'm happy that I've caught the top of a leg, so I'll come to another chart to see if I can find one. um, Daily. So let's see. So just as a bit of an example, so obviously we've got this higher time frame structure here, and then I think we've got a trending sort of 4 hour. We've got a smaller structure inside of that. So overall, it's sort of selling off, as I'm sure you would agree. So we've got just going to re-alter these. So this red line here, which I'll change blue and make it fatter. So I'll change it red actually. Do one's blue, go red. So because I know on this we've got a daily or weekly downtrending structure. So and then we've inside that we've got a what I would class as probably a 4 hour structure, something like this. So I know when we come high into a 4 hour structure, oh, I do want to do that one. I know if I can catch, say, a sell from very high up of this 4 hour structure here, then there's a good chance that we'll obviously create a new lower low, which, or at least test the previous low. So this low, this up here comes and tests into this structure high, very high. Obviously, this is the wick high, and then obviously it presents something a bit lower down. So there's always a good chance if you can catch a sell high up in here, because that's high up in the previous structure in a downtrending market, then you're not obviously guaranteed, but even if it just pulls back to say 50%, if that's the previous range and you can extend that to the right, if you can catch something high and you even just take it to what you would class as a valid pullback, like you can catch monster moves from here. I actually did. I think it must have been in here somewhere. But it might have been this one. um, yeah, it might have been this one here. I think I've done a video on this trade as well, the entry, and so it might be worth checking that out. But yeah, because I knew this was. Obviously I didn't know for certain, but I knew there was a high probability if I could catch a sell from here, which I believe this was the one. I knew we was at least trying to aim for bottom 25% of this whole leg here, or this one, whatever it was, because we are in a heavily higher time frame downtrending move. So you could use higher time frame structures to determine whether you want to hold or not. Obviously, it's a lot of pressure, a lot of anxieties, but because the patterns are the same, if you can catch a 1 minute move up here on a 4 hour structure, it's doable. Obviously, you'd feel sick if you'd have took a trade from up here and held it, take this low out, you'd be feeling pretty crappy right now that it's come back and possibly mitigated something in there that it wanted to come for. But yeah, personally, I'm a holder, mate. So 1 to 3s are fantastic, but I'm not particularly a fan of them personally. They're not for me. So
No, that's fair enough. But that trade you had there, what was that, like 2 or 3 months?
this one here, or the one to
Ah, the
sell
first
down
one,
here.
this you sell.
So if even if something about there, yeah, about a month to about here.
A month and
Um, but I mean, we're talking 200 hour, and obviously it's gone. I don't even, I'm not even sure I'd hold it all that. I don't think I could see like 200 a fold on the table and not take at least partials or something. But you get
for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think 200 would be a bit too much for me maybe, but I mean, but that again, that comes down to how much you're risking. If you just put a fiver on that and you have 200 fold on the table, you'd be more inclined to hold that than if you'd have whacked a grand on it, you know? So it's relative to your risk. I'm I personally believe, obviously, I don't really risk what I consider large amounts. I'm much more happier to risk less and hold for longer to get the same rewards as if I was to get, say, go for 1 to 5s and risk high amounts. So to me, I see the I see the benefits of less outlay and obviously less exposure in the market. So I'm not risking say, I mean, if I was on a prop firm, I'm not risking 1% of my account every week to gain say 3% back. I'm risking a 1/4% to get the 3% back at least. So it's that sort of makes sense to me because, like I say, less exposure is better in my view, but others will maybe agree, maybe disagree. But yeah, I think it's obviously it's each to their own. Others are happy to do the 1% for free back. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Just for me, it makes sense for me to risk less, gain more. But obviously, the downside of that is that when I do lose, I lose quick because obviously my stop losses are tight. But yeah, yeah, just working down from the higher time frames and mapping out structures really helps me decide whether I should hold or not. It's not a guarantee, obviously, nothing ever is, but yeah, I don't journal anymore because I don't feel like I need to, but I can show you every trade that I consider valid is generally from a you could pretty much draw out a structure and decide. You go, yeah, is the majority of them are going to 4 hour lows and things like that. And obviously, mapping that around liquidities and structures and imbalances, and you can make a strategy out of that. So, um, yeah. Any questions, guys? Before I move on to something else.
No, all good. Thanks.
No worries, mate. No worries. Uh, Dan has asked me to go over AU. So I have got this marked. So we've got relative-ish equal lows here. And I've on the daily at the minute, so I'll change to the 4 hour. So relative equal lows, this one here, and this order block here is possibly responsible for that liquidity being taken. Obviously, big push down for this candle here. Big candle here. So obviously, I need to mark up the imbalances in and around this blue box, and there is technically if this is to sell off from this area that causes the liquidity to be taken, technically it can happen anywhere from that high to obviously the creation of imbalance. It's obviously tapped into it already, and start to push away, but that push away might just be the market close price. But yeah, technically it can happen anywhere in here. So obviously, I'm not going to mark them now because we are getting late into the call. But I'll mark out the imbalances in this, and obviously if price comes and taps any that I like, and then does a 1 minute break to the downside, there's a good chance that it may sell off from there. Um, daily second. Obviously, you can see we are downtrending relatively, but there's possibly a trend line in here. So this might be a sweep. I got that mark. No.
I think there's also daily equal lows, Lee, as well,
Yeah,
quite close together. But I think that's what would entice me to it anyway.
yeah, yeah. So I'll get to it in a second. Trend line there, possibly. The reason why I'm marking this possibly is because I might have done this one actually. So let's see. Just mark here. That's so just doing that because I'm going to delete that one. Yeah. So this trend line here. So this maybe not. That does possibly create a trend line as well. So I'm just marking because if this is the valid trend line, obviously it's a touch there. It's a bit tight. We could maybe come back up into this area here as well still. Um, but again, obviously we would wait to see what happens in here anyway. This is
It,
the zone that's in front of us, so failing that, I think it'll possibly come up in here and possibly maybe continue down from there. But
can you just
we
explain a bit more than why you thought up there, mate? What do you mean by that trend line?
yes.
Why would it go up there?
So obviously I'll have to check to see if it's played out already or not. But I've got a so I've got this marked up here. So there's a trend line
Okay.
here, and then obviously it sweeps. It just depends if that's played out or not. Obviously, there's no guarantee that it will come up here and this will hold. It's just
Mhm.
obviously the strategy is obviously to build up a trend line. There's a sweep. It's definitely broken structure to the downside. Obviously, this is the 2 hour at the minute. I'd only be looking for 1 minute for an entry, which is so I've marked out two zones. And then obviously this order block, you could argue up here is responsibility for this trend line I've just drawn taking. So
Yeah.
yeah, so but obviously this is also possible for this trend line being taken. So if this one fails, this will definitely be the next zone I'm looking for.
Hmm.
We could also get a small sell out of this because obviously there is a possibility that we obviously higher time frame would definitely bearish headed down, but we are starting to obviously we're breaking highs now, so this
Yeah.
could continue up as well. But obviously we've got to be, I suppose, dynamic. So we're looking for sells, but we could also be looking for buys as well. So we don't close ourselves off from going, no, I'm looking for only sells because
Yeah.
obviously price is currently heading upwards. Um, but obviously we are looking for both areas to maybe then continue downwards.
Those
Um,
two potential entries you've got marked, the green boxes there, Lee.
yeah, yeah.
Have you
So
marked them off just on the basis of that trend line sweep, or is it tapped? Is it tapped
I
into something left?
I can't remember, mate. So I marked it a month or two ago now. Check it out. Um,
Oh, right, okay.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, I've not deleted whatever I've marked up, so I don't know if it's played out or not. So, so it looks to have not played out. So these are possible orders that I'll set pending on when price gets a bit nearer. If it gets a bit nearer, but
But the high above them that caused the sweep,
yeah.
has that taken in an imbalance, or are you marking up the entries just off the sweep?
Now I'm assuming, mate, that we would have. I don't know. I don't know.
You don't necessarily check before you mark up your entry boxes, no.
Yeah, I generally always check, mate, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I might have been prattling around at this point, and don't know. Obviously, it's half filled, whatever this is here. So, and this directly above it looks relatively balanced, apart from this huge push up. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be a bit worried by this, but fairly happy that it's tapped into something in here. Obviously, there's this big push up, big push down.
Okay.
Yeah, so it definitely happens here, obviously, but I don't know what
You'd
that
be
would.
happy to still take them as entries with that big imbalance.
Well, there's a yeah, possibly, mate. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, I'd have to take a proper look into them again, So
Yeah, no, that's cool.
I can't say yes, stick a pending on it because it was a long time ago now. But
Would it depend how strong the change of character is, Lee? Yeah.
uh, no, not really, mate. It's
No.
no, it's obviously the reason the reason why I pick me points of interest are generally obviously because I'm not just picking any order block in on a chart, so I'm generally picking ones that are taking liquidity, breaking a structure, and leave a decent imbalance of or whatever. So my order blocks have got at least three confirmations, which obviously this is. Let's say this has mitigated something in here. This price action up here could technically be an order block because let's just mark it roughly or whatever. This possibly takes these lows. There's possibly a trend line somewhere. So yeah, this is a. I mean, this looks to have mitigated something in here. So obviously, when something gets mitigated, you can technically move. There's a possibility you just move the point of interest to the next sort of area as well. But yeah, there's it's done everything I'd sort of want it to. It's just a debate as to whether there's a bit of imbalance above it, and it's a big imbalance, which was probably news looking at the time. So I think it's midnight. And that might even be market closed, to be honest. But yeah, I'm relatively happy of what it's tapped into. Not so happy about the amounts above. So, but obviously it's created liquidity. Then it's swept it. It's broken to the downside again. It's taken lows. It's possibly taken, and obviously this is possibly because this big trend line being taken. So it's a high probability ish zone.
Yep.
I just don't know if obviously if it will come up higher for this, and this is possibly a trap. It could well be. It might be. Obviously, I need to check the imbalances in this as well. The entry I could have even marked it wrong, and the entry zone's lower. I don't know, but check. So, I mean, I quite like this. Is a good push up. Probably get that a bit tighter. Something. Don't know what that's doing. Why the max is so high? That could be something like that. And obviously, there's another huge push here. Not as keen on this one. Yeah, not as keen on this higher one. Quite keen on this one. So I think obviously with the imbalance being so big above, what I'll probably do is I'll probably set an alert, watch it. If it fills this and reacts, starts pushing down, and maybe market execute, and obviously the entry won't be as tight, so the risk reward won't be as good. But as far as anything else is concerned, it's done everything I want it to. Yeah, definitely worth an eye. But obviously that's if this zone fails anyway. So this
Yeah,
one might.
just keep eyes on it basically.
Yes, yeah. So obviously, if this one fails, we'll then looking higher for a possible sell off. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Can
this is the
I ask you
first one.
a really quick question on structurally on this chart?
Yeah, of course, mate. Yeah,
Could you jump to the 4 hour for me, mate?
I can. Yeah.
On that last big, huge push down around about the, where's it gone? 7th of November, there's a big spike up. I didn't know if that was a structure point or not. Just gone past it. 7th of November, mate.
Oh, this one up here.
That there, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a structure point or not. If that was a pullback.
I'm going to say yes, mate. So
Yeah.
structure on this. I mean, it's difficult price action. All this, yeah, it is difficult, mate. Really is. So I understand you asking the question on it.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, this is why I've struggled. Obviously, when you messaged me earlier asking me to go over it, I assumed structure was going to be one of the questions as well. But yeah, what I think what I think it is, mate, is obviously this is obviously the trending upwards structure is far easier than
Yeah.
the downtrending one. So we've got on the way up, we've got so high, low, just about a new high, low, high. That's relatively simple to sort of spot. So because the rules on structure are this leg is valid until the high or low is broken.
Yeah.
So we pretty much in a straight line up until this is taken. So we've got this is possibly a low. It might be this one technically because it's the overall low before a significant pullback. So
Yeah.
that's probably the structure. After that, mate, could be anything. We could maybe include some of these pullbacks. I'm not sure.
At first, I had it going basically just from that top all the way to the bottom. Yeah, I just wasn't sure about
Yeah,
that 7th bit.
it's difficult, mate. So we could be this. Um,
So even though we've took that last high at the minute, if it's not a valid high, we're
no,
still in a downtrend, aren't we?
yeah, this is it, mate. So what I think is right. So I don't think I ever really speak about this. So I'll just delete that line I was just doing. This is such a deep push as well
Mhm.
that I think price is always going to come and fill this massive imbalance here. It's so big. So I know obviously we create a low and then obviously pretty much a high and then a new lower low. But
Yeah.
then obviously we get a break. Obviously we've recently just broken that high. But because of I'll just draw a box around it. So that zone there obviously causes this huge push. There's an argument that this filling of this order block or whatever is a price correction because this is not natural price action.
Yeah.
So this pullback here could just be correcting this move, and then
Hmm.
obviously that would then make. I'm trying not to confuse everybody because structure is difficult anyway, but effectively, this is possibly because this is just a correction of that. This is possibly the same move, and then now we're
Yeah.
pulling back somewhere. I mean, if it
Yeah.
pulls back into here, that one we were
Top
just talking about,
25%.
that's the top 25%. But
Mhm.
there's also a good possibility that this is not the structure, and we might consider some in here pullbacks. I just don't believe they are. But yeah,
So at the minute, I've got it pretty much marked out the same, so
yeah.
I'm pretty happy with that.
But yeah, that pretty much that top 20%. If I'm right with this being the structure, then
Yeah.
this entry up here is possibly grey areas for long-term sells for a possible new lower low.
Okay.
But yeah, super difficult, mate.
No worries. Thanks, Lee.
But
Cheers for that, mate.
no worries, mate. Just before we clock off on that one, because what I'll do, mate, is because we can possibly use other pairings to maybe help with the structure on this as well. So obviously,
Okay.
Ord CAD is relatively identical, but we can maybe use cleaner structures on this to decide where we're happy for structures on Ord USD. I know
All right.
obviously they're both Aussie dollar, and then I know obviously the Americans the biggest economy or whatever, but because the Canadians are pretty much attached to it, they're going to be relatively identical and a bit, not identical, that's the wrong word, similar. So obviously, I think it's we could maybe use because obviously this is bought up like AU is, so we can maybe
Yeah.
use this as just a bit of a guide more than anything. So we
Yeah.
can probably say something maybe like this is possible structure on or kind of apart from that last leg, because obviously what it does next determines whether this is
Yeah.
pullback or a break of structure or whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, we could maybe use similar pairings to decide if what odd USD might be, you know. But it's obviously it's not a given because they are different,
Yeah.
yeah, this structure is a little bit easier to read and it's very similar to AU. And obviously, I don't think I had. So I was I was following this and I predicted this buy anyway, this buy here. So, and I don't think it showed on AU. No. So yeah, obviously Ord CAD showed that this buy possibly, whereas AU
Yeah.
didn't. So yeah, you can use very similar pairings to. Obviously, the similar pairings would be NZD and A order are obviously relatively the same, obviously same side of the
Yeah.
world and next to each other. Uh, America and Canadian dollar, and then obviously EU and GU are relatively similar. So obviously, as long as one pairing's the same, and then you can use the other pairings of similar sort of economies
Yeah.
and countries or whatever.
Correlating pair.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah. Just a little tip. Obviously, it's not a definite, but like I say, Ord CAD presented the reversal signal, whereas AU didn't. But they've both moved that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a handy little tip there for you, mate. So
Trying to see if OrdCAD took that high. Don't think it did it? Did it?
what this one here, mate, or
Yeah. Did you say that
uh,
last high?
so it depends on. Obviously, I've roughly drawn this. I've not spent the time to actually make sure I'm dead happy with this as the
Yeah, yeah. Can't say that, Lee. I've just stuck 100 lots on it, mate.
Adam.
Can't say that. I've just stuck 100 lots on it.
Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. Yeah. It depends if you put it there or here, mate. I think maybe that. But then you could then argue that this is a low and this is a pullback. So,
Yeah.
which is probably just having a quick look at it. So, ignore this bit. So, if that's the high,
Mm-hmm.
we've then got a possible low, high, low. We've then broken the high here.
Yep.
I'll change this color. We then come back and mitigate this area here by the looks of it that causes this high to be taken. Mitigation. And we are now possibly making a new high above here, this structure high.
Yeah.
So I'll change that blue just so you can see. So there's a good chance that this is the blue is the actual structure. Like I say, breaker structure. This is likely the cause of it. Mitigation here looks like it's obviously there'll be an imbalance in here, which mitigates it. There's then a breaker structure, no doubt, mitigation. So there's possibly a buy in there. Obviously, then wicks. You can tell just by looking at the wicks. So low mitigation. The next wick after it comes back is a bit higher. So that's probably a great entry from Thursday. And then obviously, if that structure's right, we could well see a break above,
new highs
above this blue line, this blue structure, possibly, possibly into this structure high, maybe. If it takes this high as well, if this is the right structure, then I would say we are definitely bullish. So obviously, it can take the one high and still be considered a liquidity sweep. If it takes two, I'm saying it's definitely bullish, longer term as well. So obviously that's 4 hour. If we go to a bigger structure, we could well be. This is possibly a structure as well. So all the way up there, we could be. We could be seeing new high highs, mate, on what would probably be the daily structure. New high, new. Assuming that's just I don't know if that's taken that previous low or not, but yeah, I think it has. Whether that's classed as a breaker structure or not, I don't know, but there's a good chance that it's obviously because we're higher time frame. We could even come mitigate something in this top 25% and then new lower low, or if that's not considered a break and it's just a sweep, we could then a new high overall. So could come and take this. But obviously, I say it week in, week out, mate. Structure's so difficult at times. There's so many,
it can be.
There's so many ifs and buts. But it's like anything, mate. There's no one guaranteed in trading. It's all probabilities and things, and what sort of makes sense to us. So, but yeah, like it's just by drawing this structure out on say the 4 hour means that obviously because we knew that was a possible 4 hour structure. And we've had plenty of time to spot this, possibly, you know. So, from late January, that takes it there. We've had 3, maybe 4 weeks nearly to try and figure out where our entries, the zones are going to be. Obviously, it still might come lower because we've created a trend line as well, but it might give us another entry, to be honest. Another chance to get in. But yeah, structures, I think it's underrated, very difficult, but it's a good indication of where we will possibly go next. So yeah, any questions, guys, before I pull the plug?
No, mate. Cheers for that, buddy.
All good, dude. Nice one.
No worries, boys. I'm assuming you should probably listen back a couple of times, maybe especially for the newer guys. But yeah, cheers, guys. I'll call it there, and I'll speak to you all in the group in the chat.
Cheers, Lee. Thank you.
Cheers, boys. Thank you.
Cheers.